I want to welcome now Michael Steele. He served as a lieutenant governor and used to run the RNC, and former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen.
Hey, how you doing, Ari?
I'm all right. Michael, I want to start big picture. We just set up what we're all going through. The law matters, and it matters most when lives are at stake. But I want to broaden above the law for a moment, as this has been digested over these 26 hours or so, Michael. What does it mean to both have what the jury found to be justice and yet to know how aberrant and rare such justice is?
Well, it means a lot. I think it turns some corners that, we have been trying to turn for generations. When you look at, individuals like a Paul Butler and others in the legal profession who are grinding through this process as African Americans, recognizing that, they're trying these cases and trying to uphold this system of justice, and at the same time watching what happens to individuals in their community. It is frustrating. It is agonizing. And I think part of what you heard yesterday was just like this collective, oh my God, did that just happen? Because it's so surreal in many respects for a lot of people, particularly for this generation that has a very different outlook about our politics, a very different attitude about what this country should be and what it should aspire to, and are much more willing to condemn it for its past transgressions, let alone the current transgressions, than they are to just go, well, that was history and we're still moving on. And so I think this is a significant turning point, and I pray that it is. It's not that I think that it is. I have to pray that it is too, because this is a great work. This goes to a lot of what a lot of those who soldiered on before have been trying to get in front of us, that this work does not stop. Dr. King made it very clear, as did Malcolm X and so many others, that the struggle is not just this moment. It's what future generations are going to have to be prepared to engage in as well. And it seems this generation has figured out a way to sort of turn that lock, open that door, get inside the room, and mess things up a little bit. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Paul?
I agree with Michael. It's good trouble. In the eyes of the law, Derek Chauvin is a murderer. It's official. That's what our eyes told us, and now that's what the jury has found. And it should have been obvious based on the overwhelming evidence, but in other cases, what's obvious is different than what the jury finds. So trials aren't about social change. They're about accountability and bringing people who've caused harm to justice. One police officer has been held accountable, and the law has recognized that one Black man's life mattered. Now the challenge is to move from the rare, occasional victories to equal justice under the law being embedded in policing and in the criminal legal system.
Yeah. I really appreciate what both of you are guiding us towards. And we divided up the opening of the conversation tonight for this very reason, that there's the case and then there's policy. Both of our guests today, I want to remind everyone, George Floyd's now, as the jury found murder on tape, was the spark for a national movement that was about so much more than a single case, this police accountability reform we're discussing. And as mentioned, the House has passed a George Floyd Justice Policing Act in March. It was a priority for Speaker Pelosi. Credit there. They rushed to pass it. But no action in the Senate. Now, the bill does important things, according to reformers, including completely reforming the qualified immunity that can protect officers, enhancing pattern and practice probes. We discussed one of those tonight. Creates a National Police Conduct Registry. This hasn't even been collectively basically tracked, which is a huge issue, and tries to ban and restrict some most controversial practices like these no-knock warrants and chokeholds. The Biden administration this week, right now, grabbing the ball and saying this is important, now's the time to act.
George Floyd was murdered almost a year ago. There's meaningful police reform legislation in his name.
The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is part of George Floyd's legacy. The President and I will continue to urge the Senate to pass this legislation.
It shouldn't take a whole year to get this done.
Michael, it sits in a divided Senate where virtually everything is subjected to Mitch McConnell's supermajority demands. What is the way forward there?
Well, it's a tough way forward because, you know, look at everything else that sat in the Senate over the last 13 years. I mean, it's not just what we see with this legislation. It goes back to the renewal of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, which sat in the drawer of the majority leader at that time. So the reality of it is, you know, what the vice president said, and certainly what the president has emphasized about it shouldn't take that long. Well, it does. And it means for us as citizens that we'll have to continue to bend that arc towards justice. And we do that by our voices. We do that by our vote. We do that by our actions. And I you know, look, my point is for Republicans, just get off the dime on this. You are on the wrong side of history here. This is going to move. These changes are coming. And you will either go down in history as the quintessential obstructionist to the change, which is so antithetical to what our history was and how we started out as a national party, to now see us all this time later through all those struggles and the bravery of great men and women to sort of stand in that breach, to now be the one blocking the door, shutting down the change is not where you need to be or where you should be. And if you think you're going to go out and talk to America about how much you want, these types of changes that support the rights of individuals, well, let's start with this. Let's start with the rights of protecting communities from abuse by government authorities. Let's start with locking in the vote for these communities. Let's do the basic things that are consistent with our Constitution. That's where the work is going to be. That's where the change is coming. And as I've said before, I think with you, Ari, you're either going to get on board or get rolled over by it.
There it is. And Michael Steele laying out the ethical imperative as well as where the people are going. And if we need to be guided, as you mentioned, Michael, the good trouble, the young people that have pushed harder and faster and aren't putting up with as much, and what is clearly a young and by the way, multiracial coalition in BLM around the country, yes. Maybe we need to really listen hard to them because they're the future. A fitting way to begin our program tonight. I want to thank Michael Steele and Paul Butler. Thanks to both of you. We have our